Hello and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I'm your host, Eric Fisher. This is the show where we talk to the people behind the productivity. Of all the people that I've had on this show so far, this is actually the person I've known the longest. Clark Vandeventer is a college friend of mine. I've admired his gumption and go-getativeness, if that's even a phrase or a word. I'm making it up now, trademark. He's just somebody out there doing amazing things, plowing his way into lifestyle design with his wife, his 3 kids. He has a new book out that talks all about his journey called Unlearning, and there are some key takeaways from it and this conversation that I know you're going to love. Before we get into that conversation, I want to say thank you again to Transpose for supporting this episode of Beyond the To-Do List. If you've been listening to the last few episodes, I've been talking about what Transpose is for, but you might be asking yourself, what can I use Transpose for exactly? Well, one of the best ways to find different uses for Transpose is to check out their templates library. What you can do is you can go into the featured collections section there, where you'll find curated lists of the best and most creative templates in Transpose. Templates for business, education, journaling, and especially, because you're a listener of this podcast, productivity. Once you find a template that you like, all you have to do is click copy, and that template will be copied to your library. And then you're ready to take notes, or use it for whatever you want to use it for. Modify it even. Again, Transpose fills this kind of need for a more structured or maybe slightly more hand-holding or built-up, pre-structured community kind of collecting version of Evernote. And I said last time that it's fun to go through the library and pick out different things. But it is. It really is. It's enjoyable. So anyway, check it out. BeyondTheToDoList.com/transpose. Jump in there, sign up for free, pick out your templates as you go through the featured collection, and let me know which ones you like, because I would love to know what you're using. Again, that's BeyondTheToDoList.com/transpose. This week, it is my privilege to welcome the person I've known the longest of all my guests. Clark, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be on, Eric. Yeah, we go back quite a ways.
Yeah, I was looking back through, I was thinking back through, and I was like, man, I've known Clark a long time. And just for the record, pronounce your last name correctly for the audience.
Vandeventer. Clark Vandeventer.
Vandeventer instead of Vandeventer.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that in Santa Barbara, where I'm at now and where I lived for several years, there's a doctor by the same last name. He pronounces it Vandeventer. I say Vandeventer, but actually, if you go back to Holland, which is where we're from, they say Vandeventer.
Nice.
So we're both wrong. I say Vandeventer, but it's a family tradition of pronouncing it wrong. So,
well, so you and I go back to our university, our college days, back in. If I had to guess, I would say I met you. You were a freshman. I was a returning sophomore in my second. No, that's not true. You were a sophomore. You had already been around for a while, I think, and it was my second sophomore year or something. Anyway, we met in Jerry Pattengale's late night history class. I think I would have been
I would have been a freshman.
Maybe you were. I don't know. All I know is at the time, we didn't really hook up and become super close friends, but that's when we met. But then once we started circulating in the same circles of friends, right, that was when, and so all of this
and
was
then you too is in there somewhere.
Yeah, 1998, 1999, and then the band U2, which unites everyone. So I look back and I'm like, of all the people that I've either known or talked to on this show, you're the one I've known the longest. And so your story, your backstory is really, I don't know, it's more meaningful to me in some senses because of the fact that I knew you when, and then you started to go off and do some of these unique things. And so our generation kind of did, is when you went off and graduated, we all kind of lost touch to a certain degree. Yeah. Not dropped off the map, but we all kind of, until Facebook came back around and,
right,
united us again online, because MySpace wasn't for that. Come on. You were out in California and you got busy doing a bunch of different things. Start by just informing me what you started doing out there, and then we'll walk through this timeline a bit.
So yeah, I in college I got hooked up with the organization that owns and operates and is preserving the home of President Ronald Reagan. So like other presidential properties like George Washington's Mount Vernon or Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, President Reagan's ranch is being preserved in that same tradition. And when I graduated from college, I really took what was for me, as you know, a dream job. Moved out to Santa Barbara. I loved Ronald Reagan and spent a number of years at the Reagan Ranch, rising really from entry-level employee to finally deputy director of the Reagan Ranch. And my job really was working with our donors. I raised big bucks and, asked for 6- and 7-figure gifts from philanthropists to help preserve the ranch. And then left there. It's actually been over 7 years now since I left there, and went through a series of entrepreneurial efforts that had either they were somewhere between failure and moderate success. Mm-hmm. and then of course parlayed that failure and moderate success into running for Congress in the 23rd Congressional District in California.
Okay, so let's back up for just a second, because I think one of the things people need to realize is the type of lifestyle, quote unquote, that you were living as an employee in that most, let's say, in the largest W-2 paycheck season of your life.
Yeah.
And then also let's parlay that into, talk a little bit about that, but then parlay that into when you met your wife, because that's a key piece here as well. Okay.
Well, yeah, I had a good life in Santa Barbara. I made good money. I mean, if you're asking people routinely for 5, 6, 7-figure gifts, you're bringing in, if you're raising that kind of money, you're going to make good money. So I made good money, but it wasn't just the money I made. We had a really good life. Santa Barbara is one of the most primo places to live in the United States, not just for its beauty, but the Santa Barbara lifestyle is really unique to anywhere else I've ever been. I mean, this is a place where there's a huge farmer's market 7 days a week, 364 days a year, and just the lifestyle, the music, the culture, and we got to do it all. And then, of course, by way of my job, I had a bit of status, notoriety in the community, and when I traveled in certain circles, sometimes I was infamous, I guess, depending on where I was traveling.
Well, you knew, because of the position you were in, you knew about certain key players that became political players later on down the road, years before they actually any of the rest of us heard their name.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to, I talk about this in my book, and Sarah Palin was when John McCain picked Sarah Palin to be his vice presidential running mate. No one knew who Sarah Palin was, but I had known her name for several years, because when she was first elected governor, I was like, "Oh, who's this Sarah Palin?" And they were like, "Oh, she's probably going to be the next vice presidential candidate."
That's hilarious to me. That like you knew 2 or 3 years beforehand, and then. Yeah, it's just insane. And so you're living this life. You've got this cost of living that kind of requires you to bring in or have that kind of a paycheck. So, and that's very different now. And we'll get to that. But
we made a lot of money, but we spent even more. So we had a big nut to crack every month. We bought a home in Santa Barbara right at the peak of the housing bubble, and we were making a lot of money, but boy, we were spending it too.
So when was it in this period? I know you're talking 05, 06, somewhere in here, you started to get a little bit, I don't know if the right word is disillusioned or just discontented with that incongruency with you're making all this money, but you're also spending all this money, and it's not exactly the dream job you thought it would be, but also you had met your wife and even had something pretty major happen on one of your first dates. Yeah,
we had, I mean, it was really, it's funny. It's fun to say it was our first date. It sort of was.
Yeah.
You know how it is when you're first seeing someone.
Well, it's the date that you now celebrate, and there's a reason.
Yeah, I mean, we had been seeing each other socially. We had the same friends, but there was this one particular day that we had really spent the entire day together, and it was really our first date. I think we would have called it our first date, even if it hadn't ended the way it ended. But we'd spent the whole day together, and then I lived in a house on the bluffs in Santa Barbara overlooking the ocean. And there was a block from my house, there was an overlook where a lot of people would just go and kind of hang out and look out at the surfers go in the morning to check the surf. People go out, and just look at the ocean. It's a beautiful spot. And we sat out there and had our defining the relationship talk. And then it was about midnight. It was like, okay, it's a Sunday night. We both have to work tomorrow. We should probably call it a night. And we walked out to the edge of the cliff just to kind of, take it all in.
Yeah.
One last look out over the ocean and at the stars. And we didn't realize it, but we walked out to the edge, and the ground that we were standing on, there was no ground beneath that ground. And it had just eroded underneath it. And when we walked out to the edge, the ground beneath our feet began to give way. And the next thing we both realized we're falling.
Now, how high is this?
It was 90 feet.
Jeez.
So I don't remember. My last memory was realizing we're going to fall. That's the last thing I remember. Monica remembers the whole fall and remembers thinking, this is it. This is how I'm going to die. And she jokes now that she said, and I didn't have that whole life flash before my eyes thing. She's like, which I should have known then that I wasn't going to die because my life didn't flash before my eyes. But yeah, it was a serious fall. It's a funny way to introduce or announce to the world that you're dating.
Right.
I remember my boss, because I was living out here. I didn't have any family out here. And my boss had actually come to the ER that night. And he came in late the next morning. He said, hey, everyone, Clark was in an accident last night, and he fell off a cliff and with his girlfriend. And everyone said, well, Clark has a girlfriend?
That's the part that stands out. It's not, how is he? It's like, oh, he has a girlfriend? Yeah.
So,
and you go into much more detail in the book. And the thing that hits me, though, is that this was prior to you leaving the Reagan Ranch, is it not?
Yeah, quite a bit prior. I mean, really, it was before I had even come near the peak of my...
So you're still on your way up.
Still on my way up, for sure, when we fell off the cliff.
Do you think that this kind of had some sort of a pivot moment, even if you weren't consciously aware of it? It suddenly was like, I almost died. What am I doing with my life?
Well, I mean, I think that, I don't know, for some reason, I've always lived with this sense that life is fleeting and life is precious, and you've got to seize it, and you've got to live big. I've always had this sense. I think if you talk to my old high school friends, and probably you can attest to when I was in college.
Yes.
You have to live. It's always been my penchant, And well, let me tell you, falling off a cliff will only accentuate that. So yeah, you do get this sense like, okay, I'm here. Like I'm supposed to do something with my life. And it is hard sometimes. I mean, look, it's been, we fell off the cliff in 2002. So it's been a long time.
Okay.
It's hard to live with that every day. You know what I mean? But my wife and I actually do typically have a party every year on the anniversary of the fall and invite our friends. And it's just a chance, not only for us, but for all of our friends to remind ourselves like we're here. There's a reason that we're here. We should live and we should celebrate that. So, but it definitely did bring me back to that feeling that I wanted to do something with my life.
Like almost if the job and your continued climb was getting you to this place of you were getting more and more comfortable, that was kind of a pause button on that comfort. And from that point forward, I think even if you weren't conscious of it, I think that big adventurous person that I know you to be wasn't happy, and you continually got less and less happy. And in fact, then that's when you guys decided.
I mean, definitely I really was at the Reagan Ranch. I was bored. Now, not always. I had a fantastic time. I For many years, I loved my job, and I was passionate about it, but there just came this point where I was bored out of my mind. I wasn't passionate, and I really felt that I had to leave. It's funny that my decision to leave, there's like two sides to it. Where one side, it was really difficult. Maybe in part because our bare bones expenses, just living, were like $10,000 a month, and so I had a $10,000 nut to crack every month, and so in that sense, maybe it was hard, and I had enjoyed it for a long time. But the other side of it, it was easy. It was almost obvious, and there was almost no choice involved. I felt like I had to do it because I felt like if I didn't do it, and I use this phrase in the book a few times, I really felt like if I stayed just to collect a paycheck, that I would be a shell of a man, that there would be nothing left.
Yeah.
And so it made absolutely no sense. I had a great job. I made great money. I had status. I had a great life. And I was just like, I'm bored. I gotta quit. I gotta do something else. And
so then from that point, you kind of went and did, like you said before, you went into a couple of different entrepreneurial directions, including, a cafe and a few other things, and also running for Congress and losing.
Yeah.
That season, talk to me about that season. Were you just trying to find out, okay, what do I do next? Or did you have a plan?
Well, when I quit my job to buy a cafe in Santa Barbara, and it was a complicated deal, which took us quite a while to put together. And as we were doing that, I was burning through savings at the rate of $10,000 a month, and the deal ended up falling through. The cafe we were going to buy ended up being sold to another buyer who came in at the 11th hour with a deal that we couldn't touch. But I had already on the side been consulting, really kind of doing consulting with other organizations regarding what I had learned and the skills I had picked up in my years at the Reagan Ranch. And so that was all of a sudden I was going to become a consultant. I was going to build a consulting agency, and actually that went quite well for a while. and within a few months, I had burned through my savings trying to get the cafe. Honestly, my in-laws kept us afloat for a few months, but then my consulting business started to pick up, and I was making as much money as I had made at the Reagan Ranch. Then the Great Recession lingered, and I started losing clients. And then coming back to Santa Barbara, this was 2000. My wife and I had been on a road trip, a 6-month road trip, and as I was losing clients, and we came back and I ran for Congress. But in running for Congress, I actually cashed out my retirement and then lived off of our retirement income, or what I had saved for retirement, lived off my retirement while I was a full-time candidate for Congress. What I didn't realize when I did that is, sure, it sounds like really dramatic that I cashed out my retirement to run for Congress. It's like, wow, I went all in. I literally did. But what I didn't understand at the time was the bigger financial risk was not cashing out my retirement. It was going nearly a year without any irons in the fire professionally. So, you think about it. If you're sort of a consultant, a freelancer, someone who's just sort of a self-employed entrepreneur, like, you've always got to have things cooking, Mm-hmm. Well, and then slowly those things will come in, or some will and some won't. But I went a year without doing that. And so when I lost my election, I was out of money. No longer did I have a retirement that I could fall back on. And I had gone a year without cultivating any work. And so not only was I now out of money, but I had no idea what to do next, and really no prospects for what to do next.
Wow. Now, so if I'm not mistaken, this is the point where then you guys end up living in your in-laws' garage?
That's right.
And how long was that, and what is that experience like?
Well, again, two sides to it. One was relief. We were so beat up. We were so down. We were so broke. It wasn't just that our house was empty and our cupboards were empty, but we really felt like the home was empty, like it wasn't ours anymore. It was bad. But I remember just being like relieved to move in to my in-laws garage. Like we didn't know where we were moving, but at least we were like, in terms of moving forward in life, obviously we knew we were moving into the garage, but we didn't know like what this meant for our life, but at least we were moving. Like we weren't sitting in the house anymore.
Right.
Like it was like, okay, well, this is the next step in our life. At least we're taking a step. I know that may not make sense. Like, well, isn't that a step back, moving into your in-laws garage? But I remember being relieved. The other side of it is I remember being really ashamed, and very, very, very few people knew that we were going through what we were going through. So we spent 6 months in the garage. Then we moved up to Tahoe, where my wife's grandfather had a cabin that we could stay in for a winter. And it wasn't until even after that, then we moved to Tahoe. We rented a house in Tahoe as we started to get our feet under us again and make money, it was a clumsy process in learning how to make money. But so it was probably a year after we moved out of the garage that I wrote a blog post about what we had gone through and sort of the thought process that we went through as we lived in the garage. And I, like so many people who were friends, were like, I had no idea, because I really did retreat from so many friendships because I was embarrassed that, one day I was a rising political star and a candidate for U.S. Congress, and literally it was within 2 months of losing my election that we were living in my in-laws' garage.
Man, there was some deep process going on though during that garage and that cabin time, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that one, you'd let yourself kind of wallow in a sense, and rightfully so, but then also you were getting more honest with yourself as well as with your wife, and the two of you just starting to communicate and say what's possible, and even saying out loud, what do we want?
Yeah. Well, my book is called Unworking, and people say like, what is unworking? And it's like, well, it's not working. It's putting work in a different place in our lives. And then if work's going to be in a different place in your life, that probably means, I think we're moving away from this idea. And if you remember, this is like our generation, this was huge for us, like when we were college students,
right?
Like what is your life calling? And getting a job that is your life calling. And
because you got to get on that track and stay on that track.
Right. And this was like, well, no, maybe my job's not my life calling. Maybe my life calling is to be a husband, a father, a friend. Maybe my life, the most beautiful thing I have to produce from a work standpoint isn't actually what I'm going to make the most money doing. Maybe it's a side project, side hustle or whatever. But if we're moving work out of this lofty position in our lives, then what are we going to fill that vacuum with? You know what I mean? And so to me, what my book is really all about, it's helping people, and this is the process I went through, helping you figure out what it is you value most in life so that you can then arrange your life around those things. Mm-hmm. And that was what Monica and I really began to do in the garage. What do we value in life? What do we want life to look like? And Monica really, before me, realized that didn't equal me going to get a job. And I do talk in the book about there being moments of desperation where I wanted to go get a job. I wanted the security of having a job again and making money again. But Monica, she sensed that getting a job wouldn't ultimately help us get what we wanted in life. And so for me, if my goals are to be able to spend winters in Lake Tahoe and ski 60 days a year, if I want to be able to get just as many beach days in the summer, if I want to be able to travel to Central America for 6 weeks or Thailand for 3 months, if I want to be able to do those things, it doesn't matter how much money you want to pay me if I have to be present at a job in a physical location 50 weeks a year or more for 40 hours a week or more. It doesn't matter how much money you'll pay me. Me taking that job is counterproductive to my goals. So you want to pay me $1 million a year? It doesn't matter because I'm not getting what I want in life. And so what I talk about in the book is most people say, I want to get the highest paying job possible. And then I want to, with the money I make from that job, buy a life commensurate to my salary.
Right.
What I say is no, figure out what you want life to look like, what you want your time to look like, how you want your life to be structured, and then go find a job that will help you accomplish that. Instead of just chasing dollars, it's all about lifestyle.
Yeah. So you guys, you started off on this journey. You get to this point where suddenly you're starting to realize, wait, we can design our own lifestyle. And then other people start to see what you're doing. And even the guy that worked at Netflix is like, hey, how are you doing that?
Yeah. So yeah, and we started our blog, familytrek.org. It was really like, it was a family travel blog about our travels. And then people started asking, well, like, how do you do it? How do you pay for it? How do you make money? How do you have this kind of freedom? How are you able to go to, Guatemala for 6 weeks? Like, all these kinds of things. And so our blog itself sort of morphed from being a family travel blog to being a blog about lifestyle design and how we do that as a family. The Netflix story you're referring to, this is me on a chairlift at a ski resort, North Star in Lake Tahoe. And this guy's like, just when he finds out I live in Lake Tahoe, he oozes with envy, And then when he finds out I ski 60 days a year, he's like, oh my gosh, like if I could just figure out how to do what you do, man, what a great life. And then I'm like, now I have a challenge. You know what I mean? Like, because I can tell talking to this guy that he's smart, he can figure out his way around this world, So it's like, well, what do you do? Like, isn't there a way that you could telecommute, maybe live in Tahoe? Like, would your company let you do that? What are your skills? What's your background? Well, come to find out, this guy was one of the first dozen employees of Netflix. He's a senior executive. He's got so much stock in Netflix. If he wanted to move to Tahoe and ski 60 days a year, he could do it tomorrow, But this lifestyle design is such a foreign concept to so many people. All he can think about is the track that he's on. Now, I will say it's easier to think about reinventing your life when you're living in your in-laws' garage.
Right.
Like, okay, like we're starting from nothing. So maybe we should build by design. It's hard to jar yourself into rethinking your whole life when, I'm sure the guy has a beautiful home in Silicon Valley and can take expensive ski trips to Lake Tahoe. It's no problem. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that he's not happy and he's not happy with his life. And I'm thankful that there are people who have built great companies like Netflix, who've worked hard to give us the technology that we have. But it's still, the idea of lifestyle design is so foreign. I think the most empowering and humbling thought for me in my life is that I can have whatever I really want in life as long as I really want it. And it's empowering. So I can have whatever I want as long as I really want it. So if there are things that I want that I don't have, I have to be honest with myself and acknowledge that I don't really want it. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, okay, Clark, you have to be like, either you want it and you're going to go after it, or you don't want it. And you just have to admit to yourself that you don't want it.
And you even kind of dig deeper and say, well, what is it? What's the reason that I do want it for? And then once you uncover that motivation or the root of that desire, you realize, oh, well, either now I know why I do or don't want it. And now I can really decide.
Yeah. And it's like you said, the digging deeper, it really is all about the why. I think if you can answer the why question, you will answer the how question. Mm-hmm. It's all about motivation. But you have to have the motivation.
Well, one of the things that you guys did was you realized that if you drastically reduce your monthly living expenses, then that frees you up to be able to do, then the same amount of money coming in off some job, and this patchwork, as you call it, moving forward. And I want to talk a little more about that, how you and Monica have worked out this system now, and why you're making it work, because it's really interesting. But starting from that point of you've dropped your monthly expenses so low that then what you bring in is so much more impactful.
Right. Like patchwork income is the idea that Monica and I have lots of patches of income. So we don't have any one source of income. It's not like I have a job or, lots of people who even are nomadic or living travel lifestyles. They have like a gig, that they're able to do remotely, which is awesome, But for us, patchwork income is we have lots of sources of income coming from lots of different places, and there's a reason for that. But the expense thing. When my monthly expenses, when that nut I had to cover every month was $10,000. If there was a gig that paid me $200, like who cares?
Right.
Like I gotta make
that's like what 2%.
Yeah, I gotta make $10,000 this month. Before I even go out to eat. This is the basic living expenses, $10,000. So $200, who cares? But when we've gotten our expenses down to more like, the basic living expenses down to more like $2,500 or $3,000 a month. Well, $200 is something, that's
especially when that's just one piece of kind of a diversified or diversification.
Diversified portfolio of income. But yeah, patchwork income works best when you have less financial need. But I think patchwork income maybe it's even more important when you have greater financial need because you have lots of sources of income and you're not dependent on any one source of income. But it definitely works best when you pare down. And for us, initially that was moving to Lake Tahoe. It's funny, people in Lake Tahoe talk about how expensive it is to live there. Well, for us coming from Santa Barbara, it felt cheap. Now you in Indiana, it would feel expensive.
Part of the reason why I am still right here.
Yeah. Now, but when we first moved to Tahoe, when we first rented that house in Tahoe, it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a garage, nice little home, backyard where the kids could play. It cost us $1,200 a month to rent that house, which seems like a lot if you're in Indiana. But coming from Santa Barbara, a comparable house would have probably cost us about $3,000 a month. So that was a big one, moving to Tahoe. And then lots of little decisions. So I say, we for years didn't have cable TV or we pared down our cell phone plans for a long time actually used Pure Talk, which is a $10 a month plan. You basically get 200 minutes a month, which I typically use they were like my minutes you would be at the grocery store and like your wife calls you to say, don't forget the diapers.
Right.
But the bulk of my talking and use of my phone was all done on Wi-Fi. I had a Google phone number and do all my calls through that and all my web surfing when I was on Wi-Fi signals. But we're splurging now. We're with Straight Talk and I'm spending $45 a month. But it's all these little decisions. And so we love to travel. I would love to have like cable TV in my house because I would love on a Sunday afternoon to just like have football on in the background, right. Even if I'm not watching it, love to just have it on. But how much does cable cost? I don't even know what it costs. $50 a month or something?
It varies. I've looked at it a couple of times and always just been like, nope, don't care.
Yeah. So
not worth it.
I can't travel very much on $50 a month, but lots of little decisions add up.
Yeah.
And
I especially love you chopping wood and all the different reasons that's the smart move for you.
Yeah. So I talk about we heated our home primarily with a wood-burning stove, which was a process that took me really from May to November to work on, gathering the rounds, splitting the wood, and then stacking the wood. And it took a lot of wood to heat our home all winter. But in that process, number one, I was saving money because I wouldn't have to have an increased utility bill, to run the furnace all winter. Number two, I didn't have to spend money at the gym because this was such an incredible physical workout for me. Number three, it was therapeutic. While I was working, I was thinking, so I didn't have to spend money on a therapist. And then all along the time of this process, I knew that the sweat, all that sweat that was coming out of my body, it was going right into our wood burning stove. That my sweat was going to heat our home all winter long. And then the final thing was, it was romantic. I've never had a furnace side conversation with my wife. Let's go sit by the furnace, honey, with a cup of tea.
Yes.
But my wife and I would sit by the fire at night, and it was romantic. So it was a good trade of my time. And now I could have spent lots of money to just run the furnace all winter, or I could have paid someone to just deliver wood to my house, but I wouldn't have gotten the other things that I got out of that.
Right. So fast forward kind of to now, especially because you guys are getting ready to go on another trip. How is the setup currently? I believe you said it was something like you've realized that you and Monica together, building the patchwork together. It's not like that's the other unique kind of thing here that I've seen in a couple of other really cool couples is it's not his career or her career or a career at all, really. It's just the work they both mutually do together to contribute to the patchwork. And together, you're still both working less cumulatively than one person and then having all that extra time for your family, your travel and all that. So
first of all, with the patchwork, the philosophical backing of the whole idea of patchwork income is that if a diversified portfolio is a good idea for retirement income, wouldn't it be a good idea for income now? So if I have a job and I lose my job, I've lost all my income. But if I have a patchwork of income, if I have a diversified portfolio of income, that means that if I lost any one patch, the effects wouldn't be devastating. Now, if I lost one of my bigger patches, it would hurt. Yeah. But I would not go from...
But it wouldn't be a killing stroke.
Exactly. But most of the patches that my wife and I work on, we actually work on together. Most of our projects are joint projects. We're a team. And we sometimes joke that our goal is together to work as hard as 3/4 of one person. So what that means is if a full work week is 40 hours a week, if both couples were going to work, that would mean that and both, let's just say, work half time. I would be working 20 hours and she would be working 20 hours, but that would be the equivalent of one of us having a full-time job, which it's like you're just ships passing in the night. If I'm going to work on Monday and she's going to work on Tuesday, we're still not seeing each other, So we want to work less than one. If together we can work 3/4 as hard as one whole person, we're happy. And there's an ebb and flow to that. There are times that we have to crank and dig in on projects to get them done. But then sometimes we go, so the goal is to work on average 30 hours a week, the two of us. Put together.
Yeah. Well, and one observation I would say is that that 30 hours, you both are probably fresher or more eager or, and again, there's seasonality to it, but you're not singularly, you or her or both of you, burdened by I've been ground down this week by my 40 hours,
I don't want to get all, egotistical or whatever, but I just think the vast majority of people waste so much time at work.
Well, that's a given, honestly. Yes.
I mean, literally, like.
Well, you're saying, because what I'm saying is you guys are probably strategically approaching that, 30 to 30-ish hours in a week with very specific task-minded, allotments for that time so that you're not wasting the time.
Yeah, every day is sort of day before vacation mentality.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
Because I want to get everything done so I can ski, or I want to get everything done so I can go on a bike ride with my kids, or I want to get everything done so I can hike up to the top of this mountain. And so I really start with, what do I have to do today? Like, if I only did this one thing, would it be a good day? Is it enough to hang my hat on? And I really don't do much beyond that, to be quite honest. Yeah. And it's worked, by simply doing the most important thing. And it's funny, one of my favorite podcasters, we've talked about this, is Tim Ferriss. And Tim's podcast, he talks about interviewing peak performers, the best in the world at what they do. And it's like, well, they're peak performers, but we know who they are because they're working so darn hard.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a peak performer and I'm achieving what I want to achieve in life, but you may not know who I am because I don't care about being the most quote unquote successful. I think by my definition of success, I'm pretty darn successful. I've created the kind of life I want to create. And that to me is a measure of success that I care about. It's not about how much money I make. It's about the kind of life I'm able to live. And I'm not as successful as I want to be. I want to do my life better. And there's goals that I have that I can accomplish, and milestones I can cross.
Well, let's talk about that, because here's the thing: you guys again, you kind of were upward swing and then downward spiral, and then started rebuilding again, and in a different sense, unworking what you had learned, and unlearning even, and then moved forward, building and designing and changing, your lifestyle. And it's never been perfect. I mean, you have so many different examples of, so let's go, for example, let's pick one here. What do you think's a good one? Maybe the iPhone one?
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, everything's going great. And talk about that experience prior to that moment and then that moment.
Sure. Well, we have this amazing life, right? Like, who else gets to, this was back in 2000. Well, it's 3 years ago. So what year is this? So this is 2012. We're on a 6-week trip in Central America, traveling around and touring, and
it's not just a vacation. It's
not just a vacation.
You guys are working too.
Our computers are with us. Some days I may work 6 hours while Monica's with the kids doing something, and some days she may work 6 hours, or some days we may each work 30 minutes, but we're still having to move projects forward. This would shock some people. Actually, Monica and I were just talking about it the other day, and we're like, I don't think we do that anymore. But we left on that trip with $500.
Well, and this is one of the things that you learned from this trip, and then Thailand was a whole other story.
Right. So we left a family of 4 with kids ages. They each had their birthdays down there. They turned 5 and 3. A family of 4 with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old left for 6 weeks in Central America with $500. But the way we looked at it, that was fine, because we had projects we were working on. We had money scheduled to come in.
You guys did so much awesome stuff there, though.
Yeah, it was an incredible trip. We held macaws in our arms. We got a private island for a day in the Caribbean. Lake Atilan in Guatemala is beyond what I can describe.
You were roasting marshmallows on volcano?
Yeah, roasting marshmallows on cooling lava. An amazing trip. But some of the money that we were planning on coming in didn't come, or projects didn't work out. Some other clients were just being slow to pay, and things were getting really tight. So tight, actually, when we were in Antigua, we had gotten a tip on the previous place that we were at about this hotel. So this hotel that we went to in Antigua, it was nicer than where we would typically stay. And it was $45 a night. Okay. So it was nicer than where we would typically stay, but we got the hotel there for one night because we got the tip that the person who ran the hotel may be interested in, we're bloggers and social media people, may be interested in having us help her set up a blog and some social media stuff. So we paid the $45, which we would typically want to pay like $30, but okay, let's spend the extra $15 and roll the dice. So when we went to her the next day and said, hey, so-and-so in Copan was telling us about you, and could we work out a trade? So we actually traded. We stayed at that hotel for several nights, and Monica and I would just spend a few hours with the person who ran the hotel every day, helping her set up a blog, set up Facebook pages, and things like that. But it was that tight. We were finagling.
Yeah, and you were doing the bartering.
Yeah, we were bartering, but we were just budgeting so tightly, and we got to the very end of the trip, and we were like, we made it. We're out of money, but we're going home. And we can crash at Monica's parents' house, and we can stop and rest, not just rest, but we can stop spending money, basically, and let money catch up, and start coming in again. And so we get to the airport and find out that we have to pay exit fees, taxes for leaving the country. And we didn't have enough money. We had, it was something like $30 a person times 4, $120. And I had like $40 left in some local Honduran currency. We just didn't have it. And we talked to official after official after official. And there, death and taxes, I can tell you, the only thing certain in life, the taxes were absolutely certain at that moment. We were not getting on the plane without paying those fees. And so finally, with the plane boarding, I just turned around to the crowd because there was lots of people in line to pay their exit fees to get on flights. I turned around to the crowd and held my iPhone in the air and said, does anyone want to buy my iPhone? And people are looking at me all confused. And it's like, well, I don't have the money to pay my exit fees. We can't get on the plane until we pay our exit fees. And at that point, it was a really humbling and powerful experience. People just started walking up and giving us money. And it all happened so fast because the flight was already boarding. It was like you just throw all the money basically at the guy, working the counter. And, he's stamping and everything's fast. And he's stamping and I'm turning around and trying to make eye contact with people and say thank you. And we were gone. And so we were rescued by complete strangers who would never see us again, Yeah. And, I really don't want to be in that situation again.
and this was 3 years ago, and you've done other trips since and, had other things happen, but been set up and ready.
So we're making more money. We have more, the patches have increased. The patches have gotten bigger. We think we're getting to a better place and always seeking to get into a better place without giving up the lifestyle that we want.
Right.
And, when we were in Thailand, our daughter got sick. We have 3 kids now. And when we left for Thailand for 3 months, she was 16 months old when we left. She got sick over there. This rash covered her whole body. And we took her to a hospital, and I was thankful that I wasn't worried about the money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're not broke, So like if something happens, we're not like totally up the river. So yeah, we've been a work in progress, and we're still a work in progress. We're not yet where we want to be, but it's interesting. We're going back to Central America on Monday, and 3 years since we were last there. And I'm thankful that we have come a long way, over the past 3 years. But I'm also thankful that we've come as far as we've come without compromising and without giving up what was most important to us. Remember the whole point of my book, the exercise that we went through in the garage and in the cabin in Tahoe, was figuring out what we valued most in life and then how to arrange our life around those things. And we've been able to come as far as we've come, I'm thankful, without compromising on the things that we value most. And that, to me, again, that's my definition of success.
Yeah. I think, like a lot of people, although I've known you longer and have lived through some of my own versions of some of this type of stuff, some people, though, they're listening and they're thinking, well, that's fine for you, but how do I even begin to remotely decide how to do anything different. How do I don't want to go as far as saying unshackle myself, but to some people it might feel that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But how, so somebody who hasn't perfected it, but is definitely further along. And so somebody I would qualify as an expert in experimenting in this lifestyle design. What do you say to somebody? What do you say to these people that come up to you and are like, "Man, how do you do this?"
Right. Well, no, you have to buy my book, and all the secrets are in there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm wanting you to give out a freebie so then we can tell people, "Oh yeah, there's also a book and they can get it." This is how this works, Clark.
No.
You listen to the show. No,
I would say begin by living epically today. Before you think about remodeling your whole house, think about remodeling your bathroom. And you can train yourself how to do this on a small scale. So in a sense, we're talking about life hacking, So don't think about completely overhauling your life. Just go, well, how can I make my weekends better? How can I make sure that I'm spending my weekends doing the things that I want to, that I value most, that I want to do most? How can I make my work days, more enjoyable? Towards the end of my book, I talk about in Santa Barbara, when I had my job and I had the house on the mesa, I had this drive to work. There was one sort of logical, judicious way to drive. And there was a slightly longer route along the Pacific Ocean, that I could take. And in choosing to take the slightly longer drive along the Pacific Ocean, that's one simple choice I can make today to live epically today. So what I tell people when they ask me, how do I get started? I say, don't think big, think small. Think about what you can do today. And I think a lot of people, when you really talk to them, they realize that we can get whatever we want in life. If we want a new car, we figure out how to get it. If we need a new refrigerator, we figure out how to get it. So think about those principles on a small scale in lots of different ways, and you'll train yourself over time how to do a massive remodel to your life.
Yeah. Live epic today. Live epically today. That's the phrase, right? Man. For people who want to dig deeper, you have a book. It not just goes deeper into and elaborates on what you just said with thinking small, but also goes a lot deeper in a lot of different aspects of your story, which we really only touched on certain pieces of here. So the book's brand new. What's the book called? Where can people find it and find you online?
Sure. The book is called Unworking. It's available now on Amazon. The Amazon's discounting it a bit, but it's $13-14 in paperback or $3.49 on Kindle.
That's a deal.
Yeah, $3.49 is a cup of coffee.
Right. That's less.
But you can also, go to any of your favorite, bookstores, ask them to order the book for you, ask them to carry it. Go to your local library, for that matter, and ask them to have copies of the book on hand. You can find me online. My blog is familytrek.org, or I'm on Twitter at Clark Vand, and search for Family Trek on Facebook, or just my name, Clark Vandeventer, on Facebook.
Nice. Clark, thank you so much. I'm going to make sure this episode is up right about the time you're taking off for this next trip, so people can follow along and be reading your old adventures and starting theirs while you're on your next one.
Sounds fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Clark.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
So what do you think? Are you ready to create an income portfolio and stop stressing out about having all your eggs in one basket when it comes to your income? I mean, seriously. One of the other key pieces, and I was glad that Clark said it, is the fact that it's not necessarily the amount of hours you spend on your work or allotted for your work even. It's that most people don't get done as much as they think they do, let alone get done what they could get done in the time that they have to do it. Most of us could go a lot faster, a lot more focused, etc. Heck, that's why this show exists, to talk to people about how they do that and what they've found works and doesn't work. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I hope that you jump over and grab the book Unlearning And head over to the show notes at beyondthetodolist.com/114 to get links to all of those things and places you can find and follow myself as well as Clark. Thanks again for listening to this episode. I'll see you next show. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx. Learn how to podcast. Theorize over the TV shows Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and Under the Dome. Laugh with our clean comedy, delve into science fiction and philosophy, learn critical thinking from movie reviews, and more at noodle.mx.